Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're glad to have everyone back and in the saddle again for our latest installment of the cyber threat workshop here at RiskIQ. We have several hundred people attending today, so we're going to give it just a little moment for those to pile into the virtual room. I'm Josh Mayfield from RiskIQ, along with Benjamin Powell.
Hello.
We'll get started here in a second. I'm sorry, Benjamin, go ahead.
No, that was it. Just saying hello.
Oh, hello. How's San Diego this morning?
It is nice and cool. Not too hot today.
That's good.
Yeah. And not too bad from all the smoke up north.
That's good. Staying safe, breathing breathable air is always good. And today, folks, as you can see there on the title slide, we're going to talk a bit about some attack surface intelligence, really knowing yourself, what's in your environment, where are you entangled with threat actors, threat infrastructure, adversary threat infrastructure, which is kind of problematic, right? Because it can be accessible and exploitable, usable, weaponized by just about anybody. And so sometimes it's the infrastructure itself that can apply to one or thousands of threat groups, actors, and so on. So that's what we're going to get into today. But we're going to, again, just give it a minute or so for all the folks to.
Yeah. And the big thing is we're going to be talking about the plumbing, like
right
under the surface that you normally don't see and you're not aware of. And unless you've seen it or been exposed to it before, you would never know about it. So the good thing about this is we're trying to give you like the live fire range. We're trying to give you the real world experience that you can actually see these things, understand the techniques, tools, and the procedures that threat actors do. So you can go back and examine your own attack surface this way and verify that you're safe and make sure that everything is good. This is what we hear from everybody that attends these workshops is that they appreciate that we tell you about real problems and we show you real solutions and we show you techniques that you can do today to increase your knowledge and your expertise in your role at your organization.
That's right. And you bring up a fine point that it's very easy to just presume that there's nothing below the IP, there's nothing below the host,
right?
But it's down there in the depths of the bits and bytes in our digital ether that oftentimes are the ways that a threat actor can become entangled with you. Threat infrastructure can bump up against you, especially in the age of more and more digital expansion, transformation, as people say. It's kind of a tired term at this point, right? But it is happening. I mean, really, organizations are transforming, especially in that literal sense of going from physical to digital.
Right.
And so as that's occurring, oftentimes the threats can hide in those ones and zeros in that digital soup. And so with that in mind, Benjamin, we're a couple minutes into this. Let's go ahead and let's get started.
Let's get started. Okay, give me a second. Okay, I'm Benjamin. Here's Josh. I'll tell you about myself. So I've worked in IT for over 31 years. 15 of it has been focused on security. So I've worked in state government, education, port districts, financial services, manufacturing, software development. So I've had experience with a lot of different organizations and different needs for those organizations. So I try to pick use cases that you might come across or you should be exposed to. So if you ever see them, you've trained your eyes to be able to see them and understand them and then know how to react quickly to them. Fun fact, when you talk to threat intel people, they don't appreciate when you tell them that you enjoy spearfishing as a hobby. But I actually go out in the ocean and I catch fish. And this is the latest fish I caught off of La Jolla, spearfishing. And here's Josh.
Is that the one where you bent the spear?
I did. So this one, I broke my friend's spear. My gun was broken, was jammed. So I borrowed a spear and I bent the spear on this halibut.
Strong like bull.
Strong like bull. Yes.
Pulling in. Hey, I don't have nearly as interesting a background as Benjamin does because I come from more of the academic side of studying threat actors and threat behavior and trying to profile their economic incentives and trying to look at their psychology and what's really driving their behavior based on the economics of the criminal underground. And so sometimes people enjoy these because we do come at those different perspectives. Benjamin being the years of practice and doing it in real world environments, and then me from the sterile, academic world of looking at it and analyzing all of the various patterns that happen in the threat world. So glad to be here, glad that you're here, and we'll get into the ways that we can unmask and defeat these folks. And by the way, stick around. We have Barrett from our marketing team here. He's taking in all the attendees. He's going to be announcing who the winner is of a gift card for the attendees here. And you also get your CPE credits.
Correct.
It'll be pushed out too. You'll get a Credly badge where you can show that off, as well as just go ahead and get that CPE as well for it's 2 credits for being here today, and it'll have a little logo on there of attack surface intelligence.
And when you go to print it, it actually prints a certificate, and that certificate you can use to show people or link to it, like on LinkedIn or your social media accounts.
Yeah. So on top of the gift card. So real quick, normally, back in the day, Benjamin, whenever we did these physically inside of the auditorium and such, we kind of show of hands sort of thing. So that's what the poll question is here, but it's just because that's what the Zoom conference does. It calls it a poll, but it's more of just show of hands and trying to get a lay of the room, just so we understand, what's your experience with threat intelligence? How do you normally use it? What are the various functions and things like that? Just so we can tailor things to your specific kind of scenario and talk about those implications.
Your perspective. Yeah, we just want to frame it to your perspective, so then I can come up with an analogy or talk about something that relates to you in your job.
Yeah. So the first one here, just like how long have you had experience using threat intelligence? So typically most people that come to the workshops, it's in that never or less than 2 or 2 to 5. Occasionally we have folks that are veterans of the field and they'll be here and say, more than 5 years experience. But we'll just leave the question up there for a moment. Probably another 10, 12 seconds. So if just give us a hint there, it allows us to, again, tailor the concepts, as well as like break down, the alphabet soup of acronyms and such, just so we can be really crystal clear on what we're talking about. So we'll just give it a sec. Thank you, Barrett, and results.
And we see that 41% less than 2 years, 21% 2 to 5 years, 28% more than 5 years, and 10% never.
So roughly 70% less than 5 years or never.
Right.
And the happy 30-ish% of you over 5 years. Great. Nice little mixed bag here. So we'll be able to compare and contrast. Some of this might be new concepts. Some of it will be a contrast with things that you've learned before in threat intelligence. Next question real quick. How do you use it? So what are the various ways, and you can choose multiples here, of the kinds of ways that you use threat intelligence. So you leverage it for use case A, B, C. So Barry, if we want to put up that question, my organization leverages intelligence for, that one, for the use cases. Oh, I thought this one was multiple choice. I guess it's just single choice. So the primary.
Yes,
primary. Primary. We have other ones where you can select multiples, just so that way we can understand the share of the different ways of doing things.
Yeah, most of the time when you're good at your job, all questions get asked of you. So you kind of do all different parts.
Sure. All right, so we'll just give it another couple seconds here. 3, 2, 1. We'll close it down and see what we got. Okay, IR.
49 IR. Yeah, 18% vuln management, 5% strategic planning, 21% third-party and risk management, and 8% counterattack and takedown.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is because our third parties are digital third parties now, right? So digital supply chains, e-commerce, and just the digital dependency to operate a digital business, our third parties have become technology third parties, right? More so than physical goods suppliers or vendors of those varieties or JVs and business partners, although they generally consist of a technical digital relationship. So that's not too uncommon. I do like that a few of you out there are primarily using Intel for counterattack and takedowns. Those are some of the more fun things that, again, from the academic world, where that was a lot of fun to do some poking around in their infrastructure. So, and then just real quickly, since today we're talking a lot about attack surface. So just real quick, because sometimes this lives in different groups. So you mentioned like the use cases, most common IR planning, and then years of experience. But threat intelligence and attack surface management are oftentimes different. And in other cases, it's the same. But wanted to see just again a scope here of folks of, is that the same program that you're used to using those together? Because we're going to use them together today, threat intelligence and attack surface. How often is that the same program? Are you on your way to combining them? Or what's attack surface management? Of course, some people are always curious about that too each time we bring it up. So I'll just give that just again to know how commonly are the folks in the audience today using these things together, just again so we can make sure that we tailor things that could be new concepts and new ways of doing things, and so that way it's not too unapproachable when we get into it. And we'll wrap that one up. Barrett, it's time that they answer. Okay.
So 53% yes, it's the same program team. 20% no, 17% moving in that direction, and 10% what is attack surface management? So do you want to explain the difference between attack surface intelligence and management?
Yeah, it's kind of like monitoring versus detection, really. It's in attack surface management as a program, it generally consists of that term, management and control. So you discover all your digital assets, you map out what your digital footprint is, you see all their underlying relationships, and it's kind of like an inventory, but one that is tailored toward risk exposure and insights of those different dependencies, misconfigurations, detecting when something new pops into your attack surface, attributing it to you or to another. Is it malicious? Was it previously known? Was it some abandoned host? Things like that happen. So it's kind of like endpoint was 15 years ago. What devices do I have out there and what's going on with them? In the same way, like all of our digital endpoints, the internet endpoints that we have, where are they? What kind of ownership quality do they have? And how can I, to the best of my ability, control it? Because some of these properties are ours, some are hosted by somebody else. Sometimes it's just your very vaporous, intangible brand, right? But your brand is showing up in places that aren't you, but part of you is there. And so it's looking at all of that digital presence and then managing and controlling what happens to it, even when it's something that may not be within your direct control, but being able to have oversight to it. That's really what attack surface management looks like. And so, yeah, and what we're seeing across in many places is those things are colliding together. And today we're going to touch on both. So that's why we wanted to ask that. And then go ahead. Sorry. Yeah.
So it's like going down, like when you're looking at something, do I stop at the device level or do I go deep into the page level and to like the script and what's running in the script and what the script is doing? Those are the different levels that you can look for. The intelligence is more of the ports, what's installed, what the vulnerabilities are, that stuff. But when you get deep into like the configuration and how it's set up, and is this one different than another one? Has it drifted? What's the gold standard? That's more of the management program. It's the life cycle of that entire thing, not just this moment in time. This is what we see. This is what's good and bad.
Correct. Absolutely. And it really does go at that depth probe. Because we don't live on the internet. We live in the internet. I mean, there's depth to the internet. It's not like a flat plane that we all traverse across. It's more like an ocean we swim through. And so there's a depth to it that really counts for something. And it's in those depths that the relationships can sometimes be hidden. And then final question we had for everyone here is the kinds of threat actors. So, attack surface, and then because we're going to talk a little bit about how those things get entangled today. So we want to hit upon threat actors and threat varieties that might be of most salience to you. So last question, just which ones are you most concerned about? We'll just leave this one up there for just a moment. And again, just, we're most concerned about these ones. And this one, I gotta tell you, lately, it's been ransomware. Every time we do this, Benjamin, the last month, like 3 or 4 months, during the summer camp process that we were going through the summer, all the summer camp workshops, ransomware was everybody's top hit. So we'll just close it down now, Barrett, and put it on there. Just really curious which threat types here, and boom, there it is again.
Ransomware. Yeah. So once you get done today, you're going to be thinking you're going to change your opinion because, come the fall, we're going to have, coming in November, Black Friday and sales and checkouts and things like that. So I think you might change your tune after today.
Yeah, because somebody's marketing team is going to spin up something. Right. And they're going to go and push the DevOps people to get it out, ship it. And yeah, it's going to be, they're like little breadcrumbs you put out there where you're just sort of inviting the pests of the cyber criminal. And some of these things are off the shelf malware, off the shelf JavaScript threat, off the shelf Magecart, plugins, backdoors that again, not just a single threat actor. Sometimes we can get very overly focused on a single one.
Yeah.
But many of these infrastructures can be commandeered and used by any of them, and then be spun out into other varieties and variations. And it's really finding all of those loaded guns that are lying around that anyone could pick up and fire at you. Yeah. When it comes to the different solutions, we have like those different sides. And again, we talk about the threat intelligence and attack surface side. We're going to focus on threat intelligence today. But one of the things that Illuminate does, which is going to be the one we're going to go into, is it actually pulls a lot of that attack surface stuff into Illuminate. So you can see the threat intelligence, which are the threats that are out there, and then my attack surface together. So that way you can see, okay, here are my problem spots, and then which threats are targeting those spots, and then within vulnerability intelligence, which ones are actually being exploited in the next degree. Me, threats against the things that are me, and then actual exploitation of those things that are me. So if we go to the next one there, that's just a quick rundown of the kinds of data sets that are in Illuminate. And we're going to touch on all of them during the exercises and stuff. But if you go on, Benjamin, from there, we got to get you inside.
Yeah. So I'll be pasting things into the chat just so you can see them and access them. So give me a second. I'm going to bring up a quick thing. So these are the important things that we're going to be doing in the exercises. So if you check your chat window, give me a second. I've pasted them in to make your life easier. So we're going to be using some tools today, and we're going to be logging into the system. And the reason why we're giving you a credential and not a promo code is that we've created some third parties and an organization so you can take a look and see how it really looks. If you sign up with your own organization's email and you initiate a trial, you will be able to see your own stuff and your own attack surface. And then if you want to get third parties, you can buy third-party attack surfaces, see people in your supply chain, people you're doing business with, people you rely upon, whoever you like. And then that will give you the visibility to the others, and then how those commingle with each other.
That's right. And again, that's, many of you are out there already part of the community. So a lot of the search and the interface there in terms of the pivots and such, you're going to see the same thing. But when it comes to being able to visualize an attack surface, this is a contrived one based on the lab environment. But at the conclusion, you can actually initiate your own, to where then you could even get this for your own attack surface. There's a 30-day trial that you can run, use it, get used to it and all of that. But today we're going to get into this, again, this lab environment. Now we say lab environment, but there's a reason we have these tools up here, Benjamin. because yeah, it's a lab environment, but it's a lab environment consuming and utilizing real world
Right.
data. So
Right.
talk about these buffers real quick.
Okay, so we're going to be using Illuminate, and so there's a link to Illuminate. But when we do the investigations, we always want to keep a buffer between you and the bad thing. So what we're going to be doing is checking to see if a domain or IP is good or bad, and we can do that through like Google Safe Browsing, Microsoft Smart Scan, but we're going to be using Google Safe Browsing today just to quickly get that information, because I don't know what browser you're going to be using. URL Scan.io will be a way to view the website without going there. And then it also will show you the content of the scripts. So that will be a way for us to safely look at those scripts. A few of the examples I've already gone through and seen that the plumbing's there, but there's nothing behind it. So then we can examine the script through going to the website directly and looking at the source, viewing the source of the page. But then when you get that script, sometimes they're encoded. So you might need to decode what's in there. And then sometimes it's all mashed together and it's hard to read. So we might want to beautify that JavaScript. So we're going to use these tools to make our job a little bit easier, to examine what these scripts are doing, how they look like, and maybe where the data might be going from these attacks. And we always have a disclaimer.
Of course, because the lawyers rule the world. We're all professionals here. Use your best judgment. We are going to be working with real, live, today moment in this present reality, real things on the internet, most of which for the purpose of the workshop are bad. Okay, so we're going to be bumping up against adversary threat infrastructure. Okay, and again, accessible to one or thousands of threat actors. It doesn't mean you're going to look inside and find somebody in a hoodie or anything, but what we are going to be doing is traipsing around in their stuff. Use your best judgment. Let's not walk something into our environment. Most of you are going to be using your own work issued machines to be doing the exercises today. But again, we're all adults here, but the lawyers make us say it. Right. Let's just be really cautious in how we conduct the exercises.
So this is a live fire use case. So just think of it like you're going to a range, like in the military, where they go, today we're going to be using real weapons and real bullets. Please be careful. We want you to be careful with this, because when you learn something in school or in a class, but then you go to the real world, you become an intern or you're on the job training. We're trying to give you that on the job training today, that you can take this real world experience and apply it immediately.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have a white paper out, and then we're going to kind of follow the themes of it. But there's 5 core areas of security intelligence. And the way we did this thematically was a lot with, Sun Tzu and Art of War and these sort of principles that are done with that. So again, not trying to incite violence or war or anything, but in that term of know yourself, know your allies, know your enemies, know your surroundings, and know your weaknesses. Okay, and those are exactly the points of intelligence that are necessary for today's digital enterprises. Today, we're going to focus on the first one, that knowing myself, knowing your attack surface. And what that really means is that fluid space that is identifiable as me. It bears signals and markers that attribute themselves to me. And again, at depth and at scale. So if you've ever seen, like, everybody wonders, like, where's my attack surface? Have you ever seen a globe? Like, that is your attack surface, because it's the internet. We live in the internet now. Okay, how deep is my attack surface? Have you ever seen the depths of the ocean? Like, it's just as deep and just as fluid and just as dense and just as strange when you start rummaging around in that deep, dark world. And so there's a lot of vulnerabilities out there. And again, a lot of these things are not necessarily like bad code or bad intent or laziness or cutting a corner. It's just an oops. Sometimes it's just an oopsie that happens. We missed one that we were going to patch. We misconfigured something that we spun up. Look, we're going at a breakneck pace right now. And guess what? About 18 months ago, the whole world changed. And so even if we weren't revolutionizing our businesses. We were kind of forced to.
Yeah.
And so, look, it's nobody's fault. There's no need for finger pointing and stuff, but just bad things are out there. And some of this is just inherent because of, the second law of thermodynamics. Things fall apart, disorder. Things go from order to disorder. It's just the nature of the universe. But there is something we can do about it. And intelligence helps us to make better decisions faster instead of bad decisions slowly. And so knowing yourself, your attack surface, is where we begin. And so as we're going back to school now in this new series of workshops, we're going to start to know ourselves. And the biggest thing about myself is I get entangled with things.
Right.
Whenever we moved out there to the digital space and we went outside of our firewall, we got new neighbors. And those new neighbors are adversaries. And they don't have necessarily the best of intentions. And I did this voluntarily, right? I went outside my firewall, I digitized my business. And by virtue of doing that, I cozied up to some people that don't necessarily have my best interest. It was one thing when they came into me. Now I'm going out to them. And so a lot of these things, these problems we experience, especially like global scale attacks and the sunburst situation and these alliances that we're seeing threat groups do and perform, the opportunism that they're just looking around for somebody, and spray and pray and just land and hold as best you can. They're taking advantage of the fact that we're all interconnected. So if they land here, they know they can worm their way into you or another. Those are just sort of the outcomes of the digital revolution.
It's you and others, friends, good and bad, allies and adversaries. So you have to know the entangled pieces. So instead of just saying, here's a vulnerability, you have it, or this third party has it, I wanted to pick something that was an advanced topic for you, where we can say, let's take a look at something that was published, that was sinkholed, that was taken off the internet because it was bad. And then what happens over time to those domains? And then what we'll do is we'll examine those and see how that bad penny keeps on showing up time and time again over the years. Why is that happening? It's because, think of it like your house got replumbed because there was a leak. And so what they do is they don't rip out the old plumbing. They just put in new plumbing and they reroute it and they cut the pipes and they leave the pipes there. But somebody could come back and connect to those pipes later on. And that's what's happening. So what we're going to do is we're going to go deep into the infrastructure and we're going to look at the plumbing and we're going to figure out what's there, what's bad. And if the old plumbing is there, show you how to rip it out from your infrastructure. So then that threat actor doesn't have that foothold later down the road and a bad penny comes back. And now you're attacked 1, 2, 3, 5 years later from a different threat actor utilizing the plumbing that was left from the previous attack that wasn't removed.
So you're telling me that if we do a sinkhole, it's not forever sunk?
No. What will happen is they'll sinkhole it, but then when the domain expires,
that's right,
it's sold. They go, hey, we're sinkholing it for the life of this domain. 1 year, 2 year, 3, 4, 5 year, whatever amount of years that was purchased for that domain. But once that's done, it's recycled. And it is available for anybody.
It's characters, it's names, it's just digits, it's bits and bytes. It can be repurposed.
And so we're going to go through that. And then the other one is we're going to look at some risks and vulnerabilities in your attack surface. And we've picked a company and we're going to show that's like your company. And then some third-party ones. Then we're going to talk about vulnerabilities in the news, because I know when I ran IT at organizations that did security, the boss would walk by and say, hey, Atlassian or Confluence, we use that. Are we susceptible? Or we have a partner that uses that. Do we have to worry? And they walk away and they say, figure it out. So you have to go do some research and figure it out. So I'm going to show you with a IBM QRadar SIM vulnerability that was released and Confluence vulnerability. We're going to look at those in the wild and see, is it a big problem? Do I have the problem? Does somebody else have the problem? So we'll be able to size it up and be able to, that will be our day for today.
All right. So it's going to be a whole bunch. So let's get into it. Everybody should have, And part of this preamble is just so you can get into the lab environment.
Right.
With us today is also one of our solution architects, Mike Andrews. He's not on camera because he's busy, making sure that everybody has their appropriate access and all that. So like that classroom concept here. So we're sort of in the classroom, lecturing and stuff. And Mike's going around and making sure everybody has the Scantron and they're able to find the lab exercise and all of that. Their Bunsen burner is lighting up correctly and everything. So if there are questions, put them in the chat and then Mike can make sure that you're in there. But want to make sure.
We record everything and this will be out online and all of these slides will be given to you, all of the URLs. So you'll have the ability to go back, watch the video, go back through slowly and do it as well.
Presto. So here, let's just real quick, let's summarize a few just challenges that we have. So everybody wants to get smarter. Everybody wants to make better decisions faster, but there are just some real world challenges that no one is at fault for. These are just circumstances of a digital world. First, everything's in the cloud. It's nearly infinite in terms of targeting. All of our assets are quite diverse and at depth. Again, what I'm going to do about a vulnerable PHP is entirely different than what I'm going to do for a misconfigured Elastic server. Like those are just entirely different situations, right? But there's not a commonality when it comes to the devices, the endpoints of my internet. Next, what do I need to work on? What actually matters? That's difficult to unearth, to actually figure out, because half the time, more than half the time, 80% of the time, you come across a threat intelligence article. You're mentioning the boss comes by and says, hey, are we affected by this? 80% of the time, no, we're not. But you can go rummage around forever trying to figure out whether or not you have that weak spot, whether or not there is a threat that actually poses a threat to you in particular. And then we don't really have the context about our attack surface, which is always changing. So that if you ask me, does this threat matter today? I may say no. Does it matter tomorrow? The answer might be yes, because it always changes. Then next, we don't really get a lot of precision when it comes to what needs to be done in a very protocol-like way. There's not really a standard response for these things. There's a lot of legacy stuff. There's implications of legacy and new technology overlapping with each other, and just a lot of established processes for the inside firewall network castle and moat model that just is inapplicable to the digital one, where I don't control this stuff. It's a threat to me, but I don't control it. It's not mine. I don't have direct access to it, and those can become problematic. And then finally, it's tough then to have defense at scale. Does the intelligence actually then get applied to my protections, to my defenses, so that as I continue to expand into the far reaches of that internet, as I keep swimming through the ocean of it all, am I protected? As I change, do my protections change with me? As new threat actors come online, are my protections updated and adapted in that same way?
Yeah.
And so when we think about it like this, it's a real simple model. So on the device side of the attack surface, we're going to talk about the other endpoint. We're used to this endpoint, right? Something happens on a device, whatever it is, some malware is detected or some strange behavior. It then is analyzed by our EPPs, right? Our AV, and oftentimes those are going to contain some threat intelligence and potential response insights. And then I can apply, that's the big part, apply to all. And then I can have that sort of coverage when it comes to that device side of my attack surface. The bare metal, where the actual compute is happening, right? But again, I don't control the other side. The other side of the attack surface is all the digital stuff. And I don't necessarily control all of that, especially in like a public cloud type of world and cloud apps that I'm using and licensing from somebody else. And so in the same way, RiskIQ, that's what we handle, is that side of the digital attack surface. And so the logic is still the same. Find something bad, analyze it, respond with confidence, and then apply to all. That way you can be adaptive. Even if it hasn't shown up here, you can be protected there because that protection can apply to all. And that's really what we do. It's security for the other endpoint of the internet. And then we do that because we graph everything. We find everything on the internet, we map its relationships. Benjamin said it very articulately earlier, said, good, bad, me and others, adversary and ally. So who are my third parties? Who are my threats? Who is me and who is another? And what's good and what's bad? And what's the actual reputation? And does that adapt and score accordingly? Because again, something could be bad today, but is it benign tomorrow? again, often the answer is yes, and vice versa. Something's fine today, but it's problematic tomorrow. Especially in the wake of some of these global scale threats that we continue to see emerge. And so going into the next one there, Benjamin, it really then gets expressed in just a few different intelligence sets. We're going to talk about the attack surface one today. But this is just like that setup of that white paper I was mentioning earlier, where we hit on all of these different points of the kinds of intelligence that are applicable given that circumstance of know yourself, know your enemy, know your weaknesses, know your surroundings, and of course, knowing your friends, knowing who your allies are. So we'll go on to the next.
Yeah.
And,
we already mentioned. Yeah, we already mentioned what we're going to be talking about, but you have to have the visibility. If you don't have the visibility, you don't know. Does the tree make a noise when it falls? If you're not there to hear it, no one hears it, you don't know. So we have to be able to collect all this data. So when we go out, we have probes, and we use what we call virtual users to go out and gather this data, act like a real user to find out, the document object model, the cookies, the trackers, looking at social media, mobile apps, passive DNS, who is open ports, active DNS, all these things. And as that comes in, we capture it. We're doing over 2 billion web requests a day. We have over 106 billion unique DNS records, over 300 mobile app stores we look at, over 34 million mobile apps that we have information about if they're good or bad, what they're doing, how they work, and all these ports and services that we see out there with all the banners. So that allows us to take that information in and understand what's happening. We have threat researchers and threat intelligence people that are looking for these bad things. And when they find something bad, they talk with our data scientists and they do it at scale. They use machine learning to go through. And as this data comes in, we're able to pull out the data sets and understand it and see what's happening, but we can go back in time. So every single day when we roll new data in, we can go back to the beginning of time and roll a new data set through if we wanted to pull out new information. So we did that for cookies. We did that for trackers. So those are some of the things that we've done. Certificates, those pieces really help you in the investigations. So it allows you to infrastructure chain things together. And that's what we're going to be doing today, where we can start off with something bad, and then we can understand that bad thing is connected this way, that's also connected to this, and build out that whole infrastructure chain map of all the bad things and understand the complete picture of what you need to do to protect yourself and scale your defenses and understand what's happening. But what we found out is over time, talking to threat analysts, that they were using open source intelligence articles, coming to RiskIQ, searching for those things to see if there's any other information that might have been not disclosed or new infrastructure that got stood up. So what we did was we took that information from these open source threat intelligence articles, put them into the system so you can click, run the queries, make it very easy. It's no longer, oh, I have to read the image, take that IP or domain out of that picture and put it into the system. But then we extended it through the threat intelligence portal to give you more information about that threat actor, because we've had somebody with experience look at it and find more infrastructure and publish it. And so then instead of starting off with that small little piece that was published, you have a more full, complete picture of that attack or scale of that vulnerability that's out there, and giving you the reputation to say, is it good or bad and why? And so it's not just based upon data from somebody else. We actually, these are our direct observations of what happened. And that helps you with the complete dynamic attack surface that understands the full cloud, everything exposed on the open internet, how everything's interconnected, what's going in and out. So are you bringing in an image from Facebook, sending out Google Analytics, running a script from someplace else? Your certificate is not only here, but there, and your cookies might be on your site, but a threat actor duplicating your site might be utilizing your trackers and your cookies as well, because they copied your site to be able to look at all that information. Anything else you want to mention, Josh?
No, you're hitting right upon like the little tactical things that got done that again, they all happen without our notice.
Right.
and it's, again, not anybody's fault. The thing keeps expanding, it keeps growing, and it's dynamic, both in its content as well as its velocity. And so like what's inside my attack surface is dynamic, entirely different types of things. And the frequency and velocity with which they change their nature. Like what is good today is not tomorrow. What is used in this particular way, let's say like an application server, has an entirely different makeup and constitution of what it is tomorrow, because we redeploy and change all of these digital resources in a flash.
Right.
And when that happens, then that has an implication of, well, what policy should be there, what controls, what protections, and so forth. Well, that depends on the contents and substance of it. Well, what's in the content of it? Well, I don't know. Right. It's all a black box to me. And that's why, but a virtual user, what will a virtual user do? Go right down into the depths of that thing, going through every single, like a human web simulation, actually using it just like a person would, and understanding what its functions and behavior are based on interaction with a human who can interpret it. And that's just what we've done. We've recreated the human experience with these digital resources, provoked it to do things, and then captured what activity is produced.
Yeah, so it's the intended victim. It's like your parents on the internet, using all the devices, operating systems, clicking on things, coming from multiple points of presence around the world. So we're simulating traffic. We're actually doing traffic from all different parts to say, from this region, from this device, mobile IP space, from residential, from corporate IP space, to make it trigger or see it. So then we're aware of it and we can let you know about it. So Barrett, if you can bring up this question. If you were told that your domain was communicating with a sinkhole domain, is that important? And do you need to do anything at your company?
Do I get to answer?
You can answer.
I'm going to guess yes.
Yes.
I mean, that's an attribute of consequence, right? If it's a single domain, well, that doesn't just happen.
No.
So I would think that it's important. The question is it urgent?
Is it urgent? Okay.
Urgent. Sorry, everyone. We talk about prioritization here a lot because look, we all have too much to do when it comes to security. So it's something, important, urgent, and necessary, right?
Okay, 94% yes. So you got the question. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through the, now we're going to start. Okay, this is the actual getting into the bare metal doing stuff. So I want to explain this attack that we're going to be investigating. I have 3 different types: past, present, and future. So like what's happening today. So we're going to look at something that happened like way long ago, something that is presently happening, and then attacks that are currently happening, or maybe just today we're going to see it. Okay, so past.
Yeah. And here, of course, you have the JavaScript one, which makes a lot of sense. That it's really easy.
It could be anything.
But it could be, a backdoor. It could be a rogue plugin. It could be, one of these open source rats that I came across, Black Hat. Any number of different, particles that are still lying around from a previous entanglement.
Right.
Yeah, but go ahead. Sorry, we're talking about JavaScript here as an example, but it could be any of these remnants.
It could be any. But today we're gonna focus on some JavaScript, and we have everything that we're doing with other tools. We do, and we have the capability of doing it internally. Some isn't exposed and illuminate. Some are in digital footprint, external threats. So I'm trying to give you a way that just through Illuminate, what you can see, what you can do, and then what other things that are open source or free that you can get your job done, so you can understand what's happening. So if you have a vulnerable website, okay, maybe there's a component, you're running old operating system, you have a plugin, you have some problem with it, a threat actor, okay, they can write some code, some JavaScript code, or give edit your JavaScript to say, load this JavaScript from this other site and add it to your vulnerable site. So now they've added that code in there. Okay. So now that your JavaScript has been appended with this other line of JavaScript to say, run this other code, it doesn't run in the server itself. This is going to be something that's executed on the end user. So the end user now, they go to the website. And when they go to the website, it brings down the document object model. And then that executes locally inside of their browser. It might say, bring an image from here, make a frame over here that does this, bring this data here, send this data out. So as that gets executed now, that malicious JavaScript is now loaded on the client. So nothing is being loaded inside the server. It's just linking or adding a URL to say, run this additional JavaScript that's a third party. It could have been like a payment card processor. It could be something legitimate, but it's running on the local machine. So now that user goes through, finds some stuff. Let's say it's a shopping site. They find something they want to buy and they go to check out and they go to the shopping cart and they're going to go check out. Maybe this JavaScript is a skimmer called MageCart that will go through and say, hey, when you see the person entering their credit card information, make a copy of it. And when they submit it to go back to the real website and make that purchase, send a copy to me. But there's a problem. The vulnerable website that has been attacked doesn't see any of that traffic because the end user is sending that directly to wherever the threat actor wanted that data to go. Now, when it sends the data, it could be the actual data, but I've seen cases where that threat actor has encoded all of the pieces of the credit card, the name, maybe the address, the credit card number, the CVV number, all of that stuff, the expiration. They encode it and then they make an image request saying, hey, let me have this image from this server. That server doesn't have that image, but it has a log file that says, show me the errors if somebody asks for an image. So then it bypasses all of the EDR. It will bypass all of your data leak prevention that you might be running because you're asking for an image and the image doesn't show up. There's nothing suspicious about that. That happens all the time. But the data has been exfiltrated from that end user to a place where the threat actor wants it. Now they can go get it and they have your credit card information. So this is how the simple way that MageCart works explained.
And it doesn't even have to be keystrokes. You know,
right.
How often you're like making an appointment at the hospital or the doctor or whatever, and they upload your insurance card, upload
right.
your driver's license. It doesn't even have to necessarily be a purchasing card. Even that form fill in the form of an upload document, upload photo, snatched. Right. Or somebody here in the chat was talking about, calling a stored cross-site script.
Right.
There's the possibilities are endless with that.
And you'll see some examples. And you'll see some examples today. So what's crazy about this is that unless you're looking at your systems and understand what should be loading and being in security, you might not know that, marketing added this Marketo thing for monitoring email or doing this or that. They load stuff all the time in the website and you might not even know what's there. So it's a good way to do an inventory now.
Yeah.
Right. So now you might need to go back to your departments and say, we need to get this under management. We need ASM. We need to be able to understand down to the JavaScript and do this. But now think of it this way. Let's say it's not the vulnerable website. Let's say it's a third party supply chain problem. Let's say it's Shopify. They were attacked by MageCart in the past.
Yeah.
If they get compromised, then any site that was using that is now compromised.
Correct.
And so that's why this is so serious and that's such a big problem. And we were the ones that detected this and understood it. And we're the first to say, this is how it works. This is what they're doing, because it was a novel way of doing this. The traffic never goes through the real website. You scan the server, everything's good. Nothing's bad. Everything configured correctly. It's only executed on this client site. And because we act like a real user, we load up all the stuff and we see it, we're able to detect these things because we act like that intended victim and we see all the scripts that are there. We see what runs, we understand what's happening, and we have a unique perspective that no one else has. Okay, so now what we're going to do is I'm going to walk you through an investigation where we're going to go through and we're going to look at an article that was published, and we're going to then look at that data, examine it, and then we're going to take the knowledge that we learned from that past one, and we're going to go forward and look at some stuff that is happening today, and then we're going to look at a real attack that could be happening right now.
Now, this is agenda item 1, where we're going to go to the CD analytics thing, right?
Right.
Okay.
So I'm going to copy that and put it into the chat, and I'm going to give you all of the URLs, but then we're going to just do one at a time. Okay, so here we go. Okay.
And if you go to the next slide, I think we'll be able to like see, folks, that there's a big group here. Yeah, and these are then shared over in the chat. So if you look over in the chat, because we're going to send this out later, so you can then use these links in the material as we send it out, but they're also right there in the chat, so you can direct link from them.
Right, so you don't type something wrong. So we're going to go through and do this. So the first one we're going to do is I'm just going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to bring up all of those things. Okay, so I'll just give it a second to load. So Jonathan Klinsmann passed away last year, and he was the one that discovered MageCard and understood it. And he wrote this article back in September of 2019, and it's still still relevant today, and it's still accurate today. That's why we haven't taken it down. So what they was talking about was, if something got sinkholed and the domain gets put away, he was seeing that threat actors were taking that information and bringing it back to life later on. Okay, so there was a domain, cdanalytics.net. Okay, and inside there, he noticed that this is how it looked like originally. Then it got sinkholed, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see this. It was sinkholed, so now any traffic was going in, not coming out, and they were able then to identify who was communicating with it, so they can now communicate to those domains and those owners of those domains to say, hey, your machine is communicating to a sinkhole domain. That's bad. You need to check your stuff. You've been compromised. There's a problem in your environment. You need to know about it. Okay. And then after those domains expire, people buy them, and they can buy them and do something good with them, or something that is straddling the line of good and bad, or doing something that's really bad. And we're going to go through those and see it. Okay. So we're going to look at cdanalytics.net. Okay. So if you take a look at this, we give a reputation score, and the reputation score goes, this is suspicious. Hey, it's the ASN is more likely to host something suspicious. The domain is registered or with this register are not so good. And the name server has seen some malicious infrastructure there before. So it's giving you a thing, hey, you should be aware of this. Now, if you click on this little arrow right here, you right click and you open another one, it will open up this window here. Okay. Now, inside of here, you're going to see, I'll tell you about what we're seeing on the screen real quick. On the top, you might see, hey, a tag that says this is MageCard. Jonathan worked for our organization. He put this in. So this is here. So this is going to show it. You might not show it with your current credential, but there's Analyst Insights. The Analyst Insights are questions that analysts might have when you're searching or hunting or investigating to be able to know if something, answer some questions like, was there a change made to the WHOIS record? Is it currently being blocklisted, or is it resolving IP blocklist where it's good today, bad tomorrow, good today, bad tomorrow, going in and out of being good and bad. How long ago it was registered, and even how long ago did we crawl it? When was the last time that we communicated to it and understood what was happening? And you get to see all the tags down here. You even get to see the locations of where this IP is being where it's coming from, the US or the Netherlands or other places. This map right here, this heat map, represents 6 months worth of data, and each square represents a specific day, and each number represents a unique IP address we saw on that day. If we look at the legend, you'll see that green means routable and non-routable. And you're thinking, this is the internet. You're not going to see any routable IP, non-routable IP addresses. Why do you even have that? Well, when we go to the name servers, we don't just pull one record. We pull all the records from every name server. So if somebody's staging something and saying, hey, I want to make this the loopback address right now on the name server on 127.0.0.1. But now I'm going to do my attack. Let me turn it to be a public IP, do my attack, have it live for a little bit. Now I'm going to flip it back. We'll see that transition. But like I mentioned earlier with the tree, only if somebody has observed it. If somebody does an attack, turns it off before we scan them before the attack, and then they turn it off and we scan them after the attack, we might not see it. So we're only as good as how often you're looking for this data. And we do it quite a bit. And we bring in data from ourselves, but sometimes for like passive DNS, we might partner with people. And if you look at the sources, on mine, I have a lot of different sources. And the reason for that is under my account settings, under sources, I have those extra sources enabled, okay? So I can see extra data, okay? Now, this data bar is all the data we have going back in time. So we know that this was involved with MageCart years ago, okay? And if we look at the WHOIS records, I can look at this rich history. I can go back in time and see exactly how it looked like, who was registered to, all that information. If I go back, we'll start to see some additional information. Here are the name servers, okay? And then we look, that's qhoster.net, and then all of a sudden we'll probably see, it will change again, and then we see here, synchold. So it's been synchold. And so at this point, it's synchold until it expires. Once it expires, it goes back into the pool and anybody in the world can buy it, okay? And then we can see it now, it's back live again on the internet, okay? So for me, since I know this is MageCart, it's working with a script, I'm gonna go look to see which domains in the world are reaching in and pulling the script out of this domain. And the place I will go to do that is host pairs, okay? So if I go to host pairs, okay? Host pairs are going to tell me that relationship of what was going in and what's going out. And I'm zooming in a little bit more so you can see it clearly. So what I want to do is I want to make the child host domain that CD analytics, okay? And so what that does is it's saying, think of it this way, child-parent relationship. If your child has something and you want it, you can just go and take it. But as the child, if you go to the parent and try to take it, they'll probably slap your hand or say, no, you're not going to be able to do it. So the relationship is the parent is reaching in and taking out that script that we're going to be looking at. And so I can filter on those and just see all of the scripts as well. But I'm just going to leave it here because right now I have some good information in here. So if we take a look, the top two, we have gumballs.net and we have George's candies.com, okay? They're reaching in and we can see on August 31st, we saw that these domains were reaching in to this domain here that we're looking at and pulling out a script or executing a script, okay? So we're going, okay, let's examine this a little bit more. Let's understand what's happening, okay? So if I right click on these, I can open these up in another tab. If I click on them, it just takes me there, but it's harder to do the investigation. I like to open up tabs and then I can save all the tabs to understand what's happening. And please, at any moment, if you have a question, put it into the chat and I'm going to answer it. I'm going to make sure that you fully understand this before we go on to the other examples. So I'm looking at these two places, okay? So I have gumballs.net, and if I look at the host pairs, okay, I can see that the parent was going in and grabbing this as of the 31st, okay? But they're also going out to Google to grab some fonts. They're doing Google Analytics, Amazon Web Services. They did a CSS import back in August as well. So I'm seeing all the traffic, what's going in and out of this domain, okay? So that doesn't really answer it too much for me, but I want to understand about the script. Now, what I can do is I can bring up, oops, I clicked too many times. Sorry about that. So I'm going to copy this, okay? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring up the Google Safe Browsing. Okay. And I'm going to put that one in, and I'm going to say, tell me if this is good or bad. I go, hey, no unsafe content found. But I know that there's something not right with this. So even though Google knows from its experience and view of the world, it thinks it's fine, but it's not really fine. And we're going to go through and examine that in more detail. So in order for me to safely do this, I am going to look at using a tool that can allow me to see it. So we're going to use URL scan IO. Okay, so if I do URL scan IO, okay, so I'm just going to go directly to this website. Now I ran this just yesterday, so we can look at the cached one, or we can go out there directly. You don't have to all run it, but I'm going to run it, but we can actually go out and search for that under search as well. And if I come here and I look at it, I can see the results, and you can see 1 day ago, I got some results. So you can just click on that one without having to wait for this to appear. Okay. So it's going out there and it's going to run for a while. It's going to go out there, pull all the information and bring it in, but we're just going to quickly look at that from 1 day ago. Okay. So now that I have this data, I can actually see an image of the candies that they're selling. It's a legitimate site, okay, selling these things. But I want to look in detail, and I want to see what cdanalytics.net, what's happening with that script. So if I come to HTTP and I do Command F, cdanalytics.net, cdnanalytics.net, you can start to see it's right here. Now, this was able to pull the script in because it says a get 200. Okay, so if I want to view this particular file, I can show the response. So this will be kind of telling once we click on this response. So I'm going to say show response. So the first thing it says inside of here is that, hey, this domain is for sale, and this is my email address where to buy it from. So the threat actor, okay, is marketing his domain of a bad domain that had infected people around the world. And if the plumbing's still here, he could go back in and look at that plumbing and say, hey, if I have cdanalytics.net / and I name a file, ga.js, a JavaScript file, then all those infected sites will start loading this thing again. The plumbing is there. So when a client goes and they click on it, it's going to see it, it's going to pull it down, and it's going to execute anything in that JavaScript. I can say do a denial service. I can say, make a pop-up, send some traffic here, do whatever, because I'm in control of the JavaScript file. And in this particular case, if we view it, there's some pop-ups that are happening and other stuff. But the main thing is he's trying to tell you, hey, this is for sale if you want it. So if you ever get told, hey, your device is communicating to a sinkhole, you need to rip out that plumbing. Because if you don't rip out the plumbing, that bad penny is going to come back again. Now, if I go to the website directly, because I saw that, hey, it wasn't malicious, and I see that it's just loading up, hey, this is for sale, I can view the source. And if I go down to the very bottom, you can see here's where the script is added, and then we'll load on the client's machine. Any questions on what I just showed you?
So we're seeing the remnants of the entanglement, like we were talking about, right? But I guess, what's the order of operation? You're a practitioner. Sinkhole it first, or
yeah. So you immediately want to stop the bleeding. So you have to sinkhole it first. So then you stop that attack. Okay. So now that the attack has been stopped in its trails, then no one else is going to get infected. No one else is going to get their stuff stolen, because all the traffic goes in, it never leaves. Okay. But it gives them the visibility to say, hey, we don't know how far and wide this is because this is affecting, users and it's affecting all these things. We don't know all the sites that are affected, but the sinkhole, because if someone tries to go to a website and that website is sending people to communicate to the sinkhole address, then that will give you the ability to know who to notify, to say, hey, there's you have some malicious stuff in your environment that it's communicating with the sinkhole address. It's the warning, and you need to clean up your stuff. But sometimes you might come across some sysadmins or other people that might go, hey, if it's sinkhole, it's going in, it's never coming out. What do I have to do? It's good for me. But it's that plumbing. You don't want to leave that plumbing in place, because that's where you're going to run into problems.
What do we do then? You recommend like watch lists for things that I've seen, that I've experienced the sinkhole response, or just any out there that are in a sinkhole status? What's the way that I can watch for this, to where if and when someone tries to, to use your metaphor, tries to refit the plumbing into those severed pipes,
I actually have an example that we'll go through. The next one is one that was sinkholed and that it's being turned back on. So we're going to go through and see one. I found one yesterday going through old data infrastructure.
So when we did the lab yesterday, you and I, by the way, folks, this is what we do. Like, we actually do this over the next 2 weeks before the next workshop. This is what Benjamin and I are going to do. What you're seeing us do right now is like what we do for a couple of weeks, getting ready for these. So after we got off the phone yesterday, you're saying that you found another one?
Yes.
Okay.
So I found one because I wanted to see past, present, future. So 2019 September, we did this article, but you can still see it's not bad. The guy's selling his domain, but the way he's advertising it, it's not to the normal public. It's to somebody that wants to probably do bad stuff with it, saying, hey, I got all this plumbing that's out there in the world, and you can utilize this yourself if you want. So we're now going to go back and say, let's look and see some other stuff. Okay. Now, with URL scan.io, I can look at the hash file. I can see all the different places that have it. But we're going to go through some examples that look at where the threat actor learns what we do, and they adapt and they change. And we adapt and change every time we make a publication. We tell people about stuff. Then the threat actor changes, and we might have to change the way that we're gathering data or what we're doing or how we find things. Like, if you look, the script might not have been encoded this time. So they might encode it. So then if you look at it, you don't really know what it is. And if you don't understand, oh, I can deobfuscate this code to understand what's there, or beautify it to make it that it's readable, that I can understand it. These are all of the things that you can do. Okay, that I'm going to teach you now. Okay. So I'm going to bring up another example. Okay. And let me copy and paste this. Were there any questions that came in, Barrett or Michael?
Yeah, there's some questions that Mike and I are both answering right now.
Okay. So this is the next one. Okay. So this is another example, and I'm going to walk you through how I came up with this, how I found it. And it wasn't something that I found like right away. It took me like a couple hours to find this example. Okay. But they're out there. Okay. So if I open up the next group, I have 16 different tabs that we're going to open up. So there was a project that Jonathan had created a long time ago that mapped out Mage Cart Group for IOCs. And I went through and I opened up every single one of these domains in our tool. And I started looking at it to see, hey, is it active now? Because these were sinkhole. And I wanted to see if there was traffic again going there. So when I went to page 3, so if you take a look, and I said, okay, I'll go to the, I think it was 101 to 125. Okay. And let me see, I'm going to make this, let me refresh this one time. So I went through and I found one, which was magento.name. Okay. And so, but I started from that project. So from magento.name, that was the one I found that there was some weird, unusual traffic going to it. Okay. And so if I click on this to get to the advanced search, I see this. Okay. So now from here, I saw that, hey, this has always had some traffic going to it. Okay. Even though it was like, it was said it was MageCart and it was malicious, this was kind of unusual. I go, okay, I want to look at this a little bit more carefully and understand what's happening. So remember, if we go to the host pairs, okay, if I change the child domain to be the one that I'm on, which is this magento.name, I see that there's 203 entries. And if I look at the scripts on this, I see that some have been blocked for phishing and different types of stuff, but there's these domains here. So I see this Nakasar Sports, Max, MetaMaxBuyer.com, Club Fashion, int.co.uk. I see these 3 domains. Okay. So I want to start to go through and examine these domains. So if I copy one of them, okay, and I want to URL scan IO, and remember, I can just go to search because I ran these yesterday, and I can paste that domain in, and I'll see, hey, one day ago I saw this. Okay. So now that I saw this here, I wanted to go through and I wanted to examine what's happening, what script is being loaded from the good site going to this malicious site. So if I look in here and I do find.name, I see that, hey, there was a GET request, but there was no data coming back on this particular one. And I go, oh, well, if you scroll down to the very bottom, you can see that, hey, it was a failed request. It made a request, but the data didn't come back. So the plumbing's in there, but the bad guy has moved the file or changed the name of the file. Okay. So that file isn't available anymore. So you go, okay. So the bad guy can turn on and off what he wants to do by adding or removing the file without having to do anything, because when he tries to load it, it tries, but the data doesn't come back. So it just doesn't load. So like you might get notified, hey, we think that we had some fraudulent transactions happening on the website. Can you do an investigation? You do your investigation. Everything's fine. Nothing loads bad. So in this particular case, the plumbing's there, but it's not hooked up. It's like you have the hose into the house, but the hose isn't connected to the spigot right now. Okay. So let's go look at the next one. So if we go back and I say, okay, I want to see this particular one. Okay. So I'm going to copy this one and I'll go back and search for this one now. Okay. And there was one 4 months ago. So let's look at this one from 4 months ago. Okay. And let's look at here and I do Command F, .name. Oh, a failed request. Okay. So that was a failed request. Okay. So what I'm going to do too is I'm going to kick off one for right now while we're waiting to see if maybe it's back on today. But 4 months ago, it wasn't, it couldn't resolve the domain name. So the domain is down. Okay. This particular one's down. Okay. And then the next one I wanted to look at was this buyer one. So I can copy this one and I ran that search and this is what came back. Okay. So now I'm going to search for this one. Okay. And I get, again, it's down. Okay. It's not there. That file isn't there. Okay. So if I want to go look at it now, I can go to the domain. So what I did was I went to the domain and let's look at view source and find magento.name. The plumbing is there. Okay. So the plumbing's hooked up, but the threat actor is no longer having that file there. It's not pulling it in. Okay. So even though right now it's not active, it can be active at any point in time. Just by dropping that file in that file location, magento.name/mage/mage.js. And the file will then execute on everybody going to that website.
All client side.
Client side, all client side. You scan your machine. Are there any viruses, malware on the machine? No, all good, because
All good.
there isn't. Is there any unusual traffic from your server going to other places? No, all good. Any unusual traffic from a transaction coming back in to make a purchase? No, all good. So all of your instrumentation that you normally use to look at something, if it's good or bad, are we patched up? Yep, you can be fully patched right now because this is already in place. So if you were vulnerable and you've corrected the vulnerability, the plumbing is there. I don't need to do anything because I can always come in with my skeleton key and connect up to the infrastructure and use it. Okay, so there was another one, uniformsgtim.com. Okay,
it's the client side.
Yes.
Just more broadly speaking, like I know we're talking about more of these mage cart varieties, where there's the user inputting or doing function, on client side, and then rerouting that critical information, whatever it is, credit card and upload of a file and so on, to criminal. But it also there are things beyond just that, right? Especially on the client side that you may not even see, like a beef, for example, and just more broadly those more grab and hold and take control, command and control type of things, all of which can happen without notice because it's happening client side. Sorry, that's just where my mind went to.
Right. And this is what's happening. So I'm trying to find one that I can show that script. So let me see if I can find one. Nope, that one's not active. We'll go back further in time. Oops, one more back. Okay, so now I'm going to look at the response. I found one, so I'm just going to copy this and I'll put it into the chat so you can actually see this is the actual transaction. Oops, sorry. Okay, so inside of here, I found one where it actually loaded it. Okay, so this is why it's important to have this data. Now we have it in our backend for all of them. But it's not something that's accessible through Illuminate. And so I'm trying to show you a way that you could do it if you didn't have all of our capabilities that we offer, okay? And did it load? Is there an issue with it? Okay. So it doesn't have anything in it, it appears. Let me find one more. Yeah, this one's not showing. Okay, I'll give you, we'll do one that has a real bad JavaScript one. Okay, so here we go. So if you take a look and you're on the main page of RiskIQ, okay, you'll see the featured articles. If you click on the second dot here, you'll see Mage Group 8, real estate hosting patterns. So if you click on this article, you're going to see a couple things. Okay, so we have the public indicators that we said, we have all these different domains, but then we also give you the files in here. And so what I did was I just copied this domain. Okay, so I copied this domain that showed the JavaScript where it's coming from. Okay, so now what I did was in another tab, I opened up and I searched for this one. So this is an active one. So You don't want to click on these domains and go here, because this is actually, you're going to see the JavaScript, and we're going to take a look at it and examine it. So inside of here, it says, hey, this is 100% bad because there's an article talking about this domain that's bad, and that, it's been tagged as malicious as well, because we know that, hey, this is running MageCart. This is really bad. So if we right click on this and we open another tab, okay, we will start to see this domain. And remember, if we go to the host pairs, there's 84 different host pairs. We're going to look at the ones that are the child ones that are going there. And we're going to start looking at the ones that are going to this particular one. So if we look here, we can see 2018, 2018. Now, if I uncheck this, let's take a look. You'll start to see that there's some ones from just a few days ago, okay? So if I want to look at these and I want to see, hey, what the script was, we can go through and do it. And I'm just going to pull up the ones that I had done previously to make sure I get the right one that has some good data in here. Okay. CD 39 different ones. The one I looked up was the CD plugins. Okay, sorry, this one, cdplugins.net. So I'm going to paste these in for you real quick so you have them all, and we're going to walk through it. Here we go. Okay, so here they are. So I grab this domain, and then I search for this domain, the cdplugins.com. And if we take a look, it's the same thing. Hey, it's part of Mage Group 8. This domain is hosted providers more likely to have malicious stuff. So it's 100% we say is bad. If we right click on this little arrow, it takes us to the query. Okay, and if we look at the host pairs, we'll start to see, for example, the first one, power right outlet. Okay, so if I want to look to see what's here, I can take this domain. Okay, I'm going to open this up in another tab. Okay, that takes me here. Okay, and I can see, hey, it's been around since 2010. I see the host pairs, and you're going to see going to that that CD. So if I change this cause to be a script, you'll see 79 of them. And here's that plugin one. So we can see that we saw this on the 30th of August that was here. Okay, so if we take a look at URL scan.io, I can take a look for that CDN plugin outlet assets and look at the response. Okay, so when I open it up and look at the response, I get this big gobbledygook, and I go, what is this? I don't know. I can't really understand what's here. It's not in a readable format. Maybe it's encoded. So let me check. So I'm going to copy this, and I went to that base64 decoder. Okay, and I don't know if it's decoded or not, but I can easily find out if I paste it in and I say decode, and if I see it. If it looks like this, it wasn't encoded to begin with. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to beautify the JavaScript. So if I go to that other one I told you about, the Beautifier.io, and I paste it in here and I hit beautify, now I get to see the code here. And it's all been beautified that I can actually read it and understand what's here. It knows where all the carriage returns should be, how it looks like. But if I look at this section right here, it's telling me about, hey, this script is pulling out address, the CC name, the email, the phone number, the city, the state, the country, the zip code, the shop stuff, probably the place where it's coming from, a CC number, an expiration date, and a CVV number. So this is all pulling the credit card data. Okay, so this is showing that, hey, this is on here. Okay, so even though we block, you might put stuff in place, this is a way that you can now look to see what's actually happening. And sometimes you might see like a URL path, like where it's sending the data, and that section might be base 64 encoded. So then it will get past all of the EDR stuff, because when it looks at it, it goes, hey, it's encoded. I don't know what this is. It's only when it gets decoded and executed. You're speechless. What's
okay, look, we do these workshops all the time where like we're showing you folks just like how easy it is to do this, to be deceptive. And let's face it, we're not as motivated as, again, you know me, I'm always about like the psychology of the adversary. We're not nearly as motivated as somebody out there that this is their primary occupation, like what they're going to be doing every day. Yeah. Just in an hour and a half's time, just being able to quickly see and utilize some of these systems, some of the ease with which you could buy something that was previously sinkhole, reconnect, pretty up what it is that you want to obfuscate, and to where it runs cleaner, runs smoother with less detection. It's all client side anyway. I mean, you can set up shop and become a cyber crime organization in an afternoon.
Or generate traffic to go somewhere. If you wanted to go and approve something, or say, hey, this is a I want people to say they like this video or whatever. You can do that through the JavaScript. You can have it execute stuff. So this is having plumbing, going to your machine, executing stuff that runs as you in the environment on the client. You know, you have to then isolate the frame. You have to do some sanitation on your site to make sure that things don't happen, or if it executes, it only has privilege in that one little area. But a lot of organizations don't do that. They don't go down to that level of protection. Like they say best practices to do this, they don't. And so this is the area that when you have to look at something, I'm trying to show you some advanced things that aren't just off the shelf. Now we have the ability for customers to say, we'll monitor every one of your JavaScripts. We'll look at it all the time, like say every 10 minutes, every hour, and examine it and look to see if it's going to any place bad, doing anything bad. And your third-party JavaScripts that you might be running, we'll look at those too. So as they roll code or make changes, who knows how often in a day, we'll look at that for you and verify that's okay. And we might go and put something in the checkout and execute it just to make sure that it's running okay. So we have that capability. But for organizations, you have to look deeper than just what's installed and running. You have to look inside of the configurations and see what's there. Config file might be looking good. It might be the gold standard because it was attacked years ago and you haven't realized it. And people have left the organization that knew all the different components, and you're not willing to say, let's pull out this one Magento.name out of this script. We don't even know what it's doing. Those are the type of hard questions you have to be able to bring up to your organization. Say, we need to find out what this is. We need to look at this. We have to investigate all of these pieces in the stack. We need to look at the supply chain and understand what each piece is doing, and look at each supply chain vendor and make sure that they're okay. Because if they're not, and we're utilizing them, we're not protected. Our clients aren't protected. If we have a breach, we're going to have to notify. We might have problems with GDPR and other things. So British Airways was attacked. Shopify was attacked. This is, it's not, and now these, the ability to chain vulnerabilities together and execute one vulnerability then another to do an action is getting easier and easier. You have to be able to look under the covers and know what's happening. And this is the exercise I wanted to go through and show you how you can do it manually. But let's say you change your JavaScript every day or every hour because third parties are uploading or making changes. Can you scale to do that on your own?
Yeah.
How are you going to scale your defenses? Well, you need to use automation from us, for example, to be able to understand this. And then when you find there's a problem, to push out the change and say, go back, take that out, revert back to the known good script, block, do something, containerize how these JavaScripts run, that they can't communicate to anything else. Those types of things. Any questions that came in? Was this one okay? I'd like to hear if you like these things. I always try to pick something new every single time. And this one is like just a way to go through and understand, oh, I see a script. But like the crazy thing is that if you look at some of these scripts in here, let's go back and I'll look at this one. Let's see down below. I want to find the script name that was running. One of them was CDN. See how this one is named for this organization? Power Right Outlets. This one we're looking at. Let's look at another one. Okay. So if I look for host pairs, let's look for, here's one. If I copy this one, and let me run this one, see if there's anything in here. CDN4. This one is named the domain. So this threat actor makes a file for every single domain that they're attacking. So all they have to do is just remove that file, put it back, remove the file, put it back, because if you go back and you go, hey, I looked, we're fully patched now, we're okay. We don't have to worry. The plumbing's still there. They just throw the file back in and they're ready to go. So it's, if you search, so like if I came in here and said, hey, I want to find the hash for this file, and I came in here and said, show me this particular file everywhere in the world, it's only going to show up on this one site. It's not going to show any of the other sites because it's a unique file for each attack, each victim. But if we went back and I looked at a previous one, so let me go back in and let's look at, hold on one second. I'll bring up one for that Magento name. Open in a new tab. Okay. So on this particular one, if the file came back, I can do it, but because it's this generic file name, I might find every single JavaScript with that in the world and find multiple domains associated with it. So that's kind of what happens with these threat actors. They know that, oh, you can quickly go and find that hash anywhere in the world and find all the infrastructure. So now they go, oh, I'll change the name. I'll make it very targeted for this one. You're only going to find that one. But we can find them all because we talk to all the different domains. We understand the host pair relationship and where they're coming in and out of from. So I can come through and say, everyone that's running a script on this domain, you've all been popped at one point or another, or you're currently being popped. So all the ones that are communicating to this CDN4 plugins. The Google Tag Manager, no, but all the other ones, yeah. And in this particular case, that JavaScript name will be their domain name, because that's the way this threat actor works.
And apparently they're trying to turn off my camera now. Sorry.
I need to show you that setting to make
I know. The thing is I have the setting set to never turn off, but it still does.
Okay, I'll have to show you where it is. After this, I'll
that one I am no expert in when it comes to camera equipment. I gotta be honest. I'm not the audio. When I think of AV, I think of something different than audio video. That's my world. I'm not an AV expert in that sense. So we have a couple more things here we wanted to illustrate to the folks. before we wrap up this week. But real quick, can we just do another little straw poll? Not necessarily like the official poll. Maybe we can just use like the little hand raise app, the little part of the Zoom. So just like raise your hand if these kind of hunts are what you're looking for over the back to school series, where we take something like research and then say, okay, well, does this happen in the real world? And then go and spot it and find it. Or, okay, some hands are getting clicked. Again, not trying to out anybody.
I just want to make sure that we got the right type of examples for people.
Because in the weeks to come, we're going to go through, again, all those 5 key aspects. So we do the workshops every 2 weeks, and there are 5 aspects of security intelligence. Today, we talked about attack surface intelligence, know yourself. So if I know myself, what am I entangled with? And does that create any problems for me? In the weeks ahead, we're going to talk about know your enemy. So we're going to go look at the adversaries attack surface. We're going to go look into their infrastructure. How does it operate? How is it focused? How's it configured? What tools are lying around in there? What kind of instrumentation are they using? What is it hooked into? Where are their entanglement objectives? Where are they getting entangled and intending to do so? Who are the threat actors? A couple weeks ago, we went deep dive into APT 29.
Right.
The bears out there, or the dukes or Itrium, depending on what name you want to follow. In addition to that, we're going to be looking at know your friends, know your allies.
Right.
We're going to be looking at third-party intelligence. That's one of the things you get with the lab environment, everyone. So if you go back to home in the lab environment, you'll see, what are the third parties that are there? That would be the know my allies. Who is it that I do business with, that I have in my digital supply chain, or are partners in some capacity, or even competitors, ally in that sense of industry peers. But who am I looking at to then understand how are they performing again in real world? Because it's one thing to get a questionnaire back, and I think the bit side and the scorecard ones are kind of cute, because all they look for when they crawl are the things that go into their factoring formula. So if like a variable doesn't match the formula, like this old key value pairs, like if they find a key that doesn't contain a value that goes into their key factoring formula, they just ignore it.
Right. Well, it's like the Google safe browsing.
Yeah.
They go, looks great. The plumbing's there, but it's not being used, but you're okay.
Yeah.
They don't look into that level. They're way, way high looking at stuff.
Yeah, you're sort of assuming the end and then finding the factors that take you to that end, instead of looking at all factors that may be relevant. To is there a criminal act occurring? Is there a threat here? And so what we do something a little differently when it comes to the whole know your ally on the third party is that we recreate their attack surface as though it were your own. So you like step into a third party's attack surface as if it's your own, and you can look at it in the direct observations,
right. Apples to apples,
of how that's factored. You can determine that factoring. You can determine the formula that you want to look for, the keys and the values that are important to you. And again, look at them the same way you would look at yourself. And hold that sort of validation confirmation, trust but verify. Sure, you can trust a questionnaire or like a credit rating score, which again is cute. Like it doesn't, again, factor in everything, just like a credit score doesn't. Everything about a person, it doesn't necessarily account for everything. And then we'll wrap up with, know your own weaknesses by looking at vulnerability intelligence and prioritizing that based on, once again, I'm going to use the term again, but real world. Just like we tell you, be careful when it comes to these lab environments and the links we give you, because it's real world stuff. Same too with vulnerability intelligence is real world exploitations.
We give out CPE credits because we want to give you real professional experience, that you can take this knowledge that you learned to say, hey, if I look at my JavaScripts or the scripts that are running in my environment, I have a mechanism, a way to go and look at these to see, are we okay or not? So this is like on the job training that you're getting, that you would get if you ran into one of these attacks in your environment, because you would have to do these investigations after the fact. So before you get compromised, I want to give you the experience that you can go back and protect yourself before you have a problem and you have to dust off your resume and go to another company and say, I've gone through this now, I can protect you now. But because you weren't training your eye to know this, you don't know that the threat actor is doing this until someone explains it to you. And that's the piece that we try to do, is the real world, real life things that are out there that you can only learn by looking at real stuff. It's not a lab in the sense that the data is made up. This is what is currently happening today, real life, that you can now go look and say, yesterday was bad, today it's good, but the plumbing's there, so that they still need to take care of it. This is where it is. Now you know how to communicate that information to the appropriate staff, or you have the experience now of what needs to come out to fix it.
Yeah. And I can see a lot of hands raised. So I'm presuming then with everyone that clicked on that looking at research, or I shouldn't even say research, but just knowledge of an event being possible, by looking at an observation of it, then is that applicable to me? And then let's hunt and see whether or not it's there. Is it a good thing to follow?
Yeah.
But
so the other thing was, like last workshop, we had Team Atlas on the call, right, where they talked about, here's a way that we found out that the Russians were behind this infrastructure because it was based on previous infrastructure, and this is what they're doing, and here's a way to find them. And so by looking at their certificates, and then we ran that script to find all the different ones. So it gives us the only way that this is by being in the circle of trust and understanding this. So we want to make sure that the community is learning these tactics, techniques, procedures, and these are the tools that they're using, so you're prepared for these things when they happen.
Yeah, and if it's one of the Russian things, you can keep yourself away from a really awkward conversation with the president of the United States and stuff too. So, but we're not pointing fingers at anybody.
Okay. So I have two vulnerabilities, and then I have
there were some news things recently. We're looking at IBM and Atlassian, again, not pointing fingers at anybody.
No.
But here's some things in the news.
Yeah. So what I did was I wanted to see, hey, if I come out and I wanted to go and look to see if something. So sorry.
I'm gonna, before you get too deep into it, I forgot something on my end.
Okay.
The marketing team is hitting me up here.
Okay.
They did the winner of the Amazon gift card.
Okay.
Paul W. That Paul is a common name, and W is not a totally uncommon last initial. Let me make sure there's only one Paul W here. Paul W.
Only one Paul W with us today.
Thank you, Barrett. Only one Paul W. So Paul W. Barrett, do you want to say how that will actually happen for Paul now that he's the winner of the gift card?
Yeah, Paul, I'll reach out to you directly after the workshop.
There you go. Okay, go ahead, Benjamin. Back to IBM. Sorry.
Okay. So I was reading some articles, and there was an article published about a vulnerability with IBM QRadar. And now the thing about it's a SIM. So if I have my SIM directly exposed on the internet, then anybody in the world can hit it. That's a problem right there. So when we go through and we look at these examples, we're looking, it's like we're walking down the public street looking at the homes. And if we see the window, we see, oh, there's a QRadar in there. We see it. If we don't see it, it's because it's not there. Okay. So remember, we are doing kind of what the threat actor does all the time. So we're giving you the view of what they can see, because if we can see it, they can see it. So what I did was I found that there was a vulnerability, okay, that was published that came out, okay, and I just searched for this vulnerability. And this is the vuln intelligence that comes out of the box with Illuminate. So if you have Illuminate, you have this capability. If I look at the details of this, it will now tell me what was talked about, what that description is, all the reference articles that were published about it from all the different vendors. And it gives you the CVSS2 and 3 and how risky this score is. Plus, it will give you the CW, the common weakness enumeration, and give you more information about it, all in one place. Just type in the CVE, it's all there. Okay. So if I go back, I can look to see if this is in my attack surface, and I'm logged into RiskIQ. We don't have this, so I have 0. And then I can look at third parties to see if they're affected. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to go look in the world for this type of vulnerability and see how many people put their QRadar system directly connected to the internet, and which ones are potentially affected by this. Okay. So we're gonna look at that. So this is a way to look at a vulnerability. And if your boss came to you and said, do we have to worry about this? Do we have it? Do our third parties have it? It's right into the product. You can click and see, and you answer the question. It's not going to take you hours of research. But then if you want to see how global this scale is, then you can use Illuminate to look to see, where do we see it in the world? How big is it? So I can see local, third party, global view. Okay. So if, give me a quick second, my screen sharing thing popped up right where I need to be. So I'm just going to move it to another window. Okay. So we have the IBM announcement, and that came directly from here. So if I right click and open, you can see it. And this is a vulnerability to the XML external entry injection, XXE attack. This can exploit the vulnerability to expose sensitive information or consume memory resource so they can kill it. Okay. So it's bad if this is where all of your instrumentation is going for your security event, incident event management system. Okay. So I ran a query for QRadar, and I'll show you exactly how I do it so you can see how we build it from scratch. So I'll start from the main interface, the threat intel portal piece. And if you search for this QRadar, okay, you'll immediately start seeing some things pop up on the side. One of them is hosts, one of them's components, and you can see right here it says like IBM QRadar. So if I right click and open another tab, it will run that query and show me the IBM QRadar, all the hits on it. Okay. I always like to go back in, and I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. I'm going to just take this out. Instead of doing a discovery, I'm going to change it to a component level. So let me just now search for it. So now I can see the values that show up here. Okay, so I'm like one level above. Instead of diving in and finding that exact match, I've now broadened it a little bit to see if it was just named as QRadar or IBM QRadar. If it's the server or an appliance, I can now see those. Now, if we take a look, I see that there's 8,000 IP addresses that have been seen. And if I click on the host now, it's going to query that and show me how many hosts. So I have 81 hosts that are listed. So it's fairly large. So this vulnerability could expose, those machines to attack if they're not properly patched. So if, it's pretty significant when there's 8,000 of these SIMs that we can see from the outside world. So if I went to one of them and I had picked one, let me see which one I picked. I'll just throw this in the chat real quick, just so we can see it fast. Where is my chat? Disappeared. Give me a quick second. There it goes. So I picked one. Okay. So if I look at services, okay, if we take a look and we start looking at what's coming across, we can see right here, QRadar.demo.com. Okay. If we take a look inside of here, if I show more, it might even say QRadar in here. Let's see. This is the 443 IBM. Let's see. This is kind of what the threat actors would do as well. And you can see right here the common name. There's 9 different fields. There's a certificate associated with it. But it's here and it's available. So like if I could potentially even throw this into a browser and see if it even pops up. I found another one in here. We're drilling down deeper. Okay. And if I look at the components, you can see here that it will say QRadar in here. Okay. So this is the way that you can go back out and now look at these and understand not only how to fix it or what the problem is, or if there's an actual exploit currently out there, but I can now see how big this problem is in the world and see, you know, who has it. So I can look to see if there's a third party, somebody we're doing business with, a friend, a relative, an ally, an adversary, all those things. So if it's a competitor, you can even see that. It's all available. It's all public data. Any questions on that? Now, one piece I want to say is that if we look, if there's any deep and dark web chatter, we'll show you if someone's talking about that CVE or talking about other things that will show up in there. So we'll show you, I think 20 different hits, 15 to 20 different hits when we have those, okay? That gives you that capability to see those pieces. Mike or Barrett, any questions that have come in?
Not on this one so far.
Okay, so I'll paste in the other one, and then I want to make sure I have some time to go to the last one. So I'll do this one rather quickly, just so you can see it. So inside of here, you can see that there was a hit that came across in here for deep and dark web CVE. So this is like you typed in the CVE and then you clicked on it to see more data. We give you the scores, that information. Now I have a plugin that I can do translation. So I can tell it translate this page. And now I can read to see what's down here. So that's a way that I get through the deep and dark web stuff, because sometimes they're in foreign languages or multiple languages in these posts. And this is a way for the to translate it to say, okay, what are they talking about? So now I know what's there. And if there's an actual chatter and there's a published exploit, we'll actually even show you that public exploit and the score will go up. So you can look at all like the 20,000 different CVEs out there, and we're going to say, well, out of those, only certain percentage are talked about and there's an active exploit. Those are the ones you need to fix right away because people are using those. So this gives you the capability of looking at this vulnerability information and applying it to you and others. Okay. So with that, what we're going to do is I'm going to jump into the my attack surface and the third party stuff to show you that real quick the last couple minutes, and then we'll drop for today. So if we come in and I want to look at my own attack surface. So if you went out to the main view and you clicked on my attack surface, it will drop you into here. And this is just an organization that we picked at random. This happens to be a multinational organization. So it has subsidiaries around the world. So it is huge. And so with that, think of this as like your morning coffee. Red means like, I need to stop what I'm doing. I need to take care of these. Orange might be, hey, this is important, but it might be something that I don't have direct access or responsibility to. I might have to work with somebody. And yellow might be something that we need to plan for. Maybe there's an older version of a framework that we're using that's being end of life that we need to fix and remediate. The attack surface piece will be what your attack surface is made up of. And these are just loading. And you can see right here, you can see those. And then the right here is how you're made up in the cloud, where you are, what clouds you're in, what web distribution and frameworks that you're currently using. Now, this section is like when an open source intelligence article is published and you have some sort of infrastructure that was mentioned in that article. So it could be that, hey, this domain or IP is bad. And that domain or IP was mentioned in the article, but it's part of your attack surface. So these are some serious things. And a lot of these that you'll see might be with like managed service providers or hosting providers or ISPs, because they have some sections that they manage, other things that are unmanaged and might have some bad stuff in there. And so in this particular case, because they're spread out around the world, who knows how they're doing their attack surface management. But the intelligence behind this says that there's some serious problems in this infrastructure. This next section talks about the different ports and services that we see open that could be a way for someone to get in, or a red flag that you might need to look at. FTP, unsecure protocol, if that's being used, somebody can sniff the traffic, see the credentials. The remote desktop, my SQL connections in here. Maybe you might not want to have your SQL be accessible to the internet. All those types of stuff. Down below is the compliance stuff that might talk about like your certificate history, domain expirations, if they're expiring or expired. And then down below, when we start seeing attacks sourcing from your domains or your IP addresses, this will start to be populated, okay? So if I wanted to see some of these, I can come in here and I'm going to right click and open up two different sections so you can see it. If I right click on this and open this up in another tab, you will see the article that was published and the public indicators, okay? If I right click on the count and I open that up, this is where you're going to see the hits on those things. So these are the vulnerabilities that exist in my environment that these come to. And this will just take a minute to process and come in. But it gives me the capability to say, hey, all these IP addresses were part of this Ryuk attack. And there's some domains associated with these as well. So if I come in here and this, I'll try to refresh one more time. This is just, everyone's clicking on it, so it's taking a little bit. So once this populates, we'll see those things. So that I can see which devices match that criteria that they talked about in the article. So then I know I have to address those, okay? I'll go back and look at the main section here, and I'll click on one of these. Let's see. Let's look at, let's find a good one. Here we go. We'll look at this one. So this article talks about, hey, there's a problem with this, and if you're you need to upgrade. If you're users of 5.4, need to update to 5.6, and you should get to 5.6.2 or 5.7 or 5.7. So if I look at these, I can look and see Tapestry. I'm running 5.4.1, so I'm vulnerable to this. So this gives me the capability. I can easily go in and say, hey, we need to update this component, and this is where it's running, and this is what the issue is. And the same thing that we have for yourself, you can see in the third parties. So if I open up those third parties, okay, and I'm just gonna run this real quick. Give me a quick second. Each one of these third parties has that same look and feel that I can go through and see the same information, the same reports, the same everything. And I can now go through and look at each one of these and have an apples to apples comparison. So if I have a contractor, that organization that we're working with, or a supply chain, or we're looking for a merger acquisition, I can look to see if they have an issue. And if they do, I know which device, and I can call them and say, hey, you have this problem, and they can create a free account in Illuminate, kick off a trial, and see the same data as well for 30 days. So then you have that capability to see that same look and feel across the board for everybody. And here's that vulnerability information. So if I took one of these, this is from that previous one, now it's finished loading. I'm going to copy this. And if I went back here and I did a Command F and V, you'll see the hit. So we hit because of that article. So that's why we're showing it. That IP address that's part of your infrastructure was part of this threat actors campaign, and we found it and we published about it. So that's how you can see where the entanglements are happening between you and others, good and bad, adversaries and allies. So that's what I had for today. So if you like to start off your trial today, if you create an account with your organizational email, you can kick off a trial and see your own attack surface, the ways that we looked at it today in the system.
Yeah, and folks, yeah, you can do if you go to the URL there, which I think we put in the chat, right?
Yeah, and I'll throw it in the chat right now.
Yeah, so you can go to that URL, and then that orange oval on the right, you just click activate eliminate trial, and then you can continue the fun. It goes for 30 days, and then it's your actual attack surface of your actual organization. And so you can really start to do these exercises, as well as invite your friends to join the fun, and get in on it. And as well as I would suggest what we might want to do as well is on the follow-up email, we'll send it out with a link to the YouTube channel where you can go through previous exercises, previous workshops with that trial. So then you can do those things in your present trial, along with the things that we covered today. So
each workshop is new use cases, new topics. We really listen to the community and want to make sure that we're actually giving the real world experience to make the internet a safer place. That's our ultimate goal.
That's the mission. So we're out of time today. The lab will get burned down, so start the trial so that way you can continue things on. And we'll see you next time in a couple of weeks when we jump into our next topic for the Back to School series. And we're glad you were here.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.